What's up, guys? Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifter for the People podcast. I'm your host, Coach Gaglione, interviewing one of our members today. Alex, how you doing this morning?
Good.
All right, so Alex recently just competed. She's been lifting for a long time, had a little bit of layover since her last meet with us, but been competing for a long time. Just really quick, if you want to just recap like kind of how you got started to lifting, and I guess what made you, decide you wanted to enter your first competition. I know that was a long time ago.
Yeah. I've been lifting overall for like probably 12 years now. I started just sticking around in Planet Fitness. And it was kind of like when Instagram just wasn't really doing much fitness stuff, but it was just kind of starting up. So I kind of got in the early wave of that, when women started like, lifting weights and all, like kind of those influential people started posting YouTube or whatever. I don't even remember at this point how I ended up in powerlifting, but it's been like 2016 was when I started.
So I think that's like, I have open powerlifting kind of pulled up, and it looks like that was your first meet that you did at our gym. I think it was like I don't even remember. It was when it was sanctioned. I think we were kind of doing UPA meets at the time.
It was May, right? Because I think I started at the gym in March of 2016, and then I did a meet like 2 months later.
So maybe you might have done and that might have been, I can't remember, that might have been unsanctioned or whatever, but I know that then there was one meet that you did. I have at least on record, I think it was like a 600 like total. And then I think that you started to kind of, dabble in some knee wraps after that and did well.
No, I think it was before. Yeah, the first meet I only totaled like 500 something.
Yeah, so that might not be maybe that's not on open powerlifting, but
Yeah.
that might have been your second meet. So because that was in December, but yeah. So I guess how, because I know this is a long time. So how did you first like hear about our gym? Because I think that was probably, like I said, it was going on 7-8 years ago at this point.
I think I just wanted more from my training, and I found that I gravitated towards heavier weights, and I wanted to move away from like aesthetic goals because that gets kind of boring after a while.
Yeah.
So I think I found the gym in open powerlifting. It was like right by where I lived. And yeah.
Yeah. So we used to actually. So I think so before open powerlifting it was Powerlifting Watch.
Oh yeah, Powerlifting Watch. That was it. Yeah.
That's like a blast from the past. I think they still have their site. So basically, before open powerlifting database, that's where all the rankings were. And before that, before the website, there was the top 100 in Powerlifting USA. So you get to have your name was in the back. It was the blast page in the magazine. So that was kind of like, and then all raw and everyone was combined. There was no like categories. This either you are in the top 100 or like not. So it's kind of like a big deal to kind of make that kind of on that back page, and then eventually open powerlifting kind of came about. I don't remember exactly when open powerlifting was founded, but Powerlifting Watch had powerlifting friendly gyms, which was kind of cool. So you can kind of search in your area and kind of see if there's anything in your area. And obviously there's a lot more options now, but before it was kind of few and far between. And I think we were like definitely one of the first kind of strength gyms. And I think even to this day, like definitely, even when we first started, kind of unique, and that I always tried to like have kind of like the team, the group aspect of it. So I don't know if you want to maybe talk about like the difference between what it was like training on your own and then kind of going into like a group setting environment. Obviously the team and how we train has evolved quite a bit over the years, but because I know you've competed equipped, you competed raw with wraps and just raw. So, how has that kind of like impacted, how your training has been, and then ultimately kind of getting ready for competition?
I think at the very beginning, it was very scary to train with a group of people, especially people that are better than you, that know what they're doing when you're first starting out. But I think it's necessary for growth,
yeah,
and to get better. But now it's like I don't like going to commercial gym and training by myself. And it's, you forge relationships with people that go on for years, and you you see them have babies and get married and all this kind of stuff. So it's a pretty cool rather than just flying by and waving to someone you see in a gym every once in a while.
Yeah, I think there's definitely been more than a few relationships and marriages and uh, you know, babies. And so there's been a lot of kind of, families kind of, not to say they were built through the gym, but kind of like there's definitely kind of family environment, a lot of husband and wife or fiance and just long-term relationships built. And I think that definitely, you know, we do kind of say it is like a family, but in some cases it's like really true in terms of like people living together and kind of building lives. So I think it is kind of important to have that kind of aspect of fitness, whether that be lifting or not. But I do think, I think being around people that have similar goals, that are like-minded, kind of working toward a similar thing, it definitely kind of allows you to like level up. And especially kind of for some of like the weights that, you're kind of doing. So I know like kind of probably, I know, like I said, I guess probably your first meet might not be on here, or maybe it was like sometimes if it was under a different name, but so I guess you said first meet. Yeah. Cause I guess now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I remember, I think that, the meet that's on, I think you might have got I remember one of your first meets, usually your first or second meet, you got misloaded, I think
That was the second one.
on
Yeah.
a deadlift, and it was only like one, it was only like 110 on one side or something like that. And I remember
Yeah.
I probably lost my shit, on the loaders, as sometimes happens, but,
I
um,
still pulled it though, I remember.
yeah, you still like did
Yeah.
it, which was good. So you had to like kind of adjust for, the weight and everything. So, over the course of time, I know there's like kind of a lot to cover, but it was like a long-term process, obviously. Not every meet was, a success. I know like, you kind of, bombed out of one meet that was done in gear. You competed in the 132 class, most recently 165. So you definitely, kind of let your body weight kind of go up a little bit. But I'd say probably since starting, probably added, a couple 100 pounds to your total. And, most recently you did a 900 total, which is an elite total, which is fantastic. So really good performance there. So in terms of like, I guess, start to finish, from your first meet to your last meet, like what are some things that maybe you learned along the way? What are some things that maybe mistakes that you made that, I guess people that are kind of getting into competing, that you can kind of give some advice for kind of people getting started?
Um, I think not worrying about body weight too much, especially in the beginning, is a good thing. Because if you start trying to cut weight, kind of screw yourself over. Um, for me, what works, like some people get really hyped up and scream and slapping and all that. That doesn't work for me. And what works for me if I'm trying to go for a PR or something heavy or in a meet is detachment from the outcome. So like if it doesn't happen, it's okay. I'll get it another time and not getting super emotional about it. Um, I just tend to miss less when I'm feeling that way. If I'm really hyped up and my adrenaline's pumping, I don't do as well. So I think you got to kind of find what works for you and what, do you work better if you're on adrenaline, or are you going to wear yourself out, um, emotionally and physically? Do you need to be calmer? So for me, kind of just being like, yeah, whatever, it's okay if I don't hit it. I tend to do better.
Yeah, I think kind of figuring out like the level of arousal that works for you is good. I've definitely tried to get more calm. I know everyone in the gym kind of makes fun of me for putting country on when I lift, but that kind of helps put me in like the right state where I'm not too like getting too like crazy. So I'm a little bit more like relaxed, because I tend to also like if I get too like amped up, um, I tend to like make mistakes, especially when you start to add in things like knee wraps and stuff, and there's more kind of technical parts of the lift. There's kind of more things that can potentially go wrong, and when it goes wrong, it can go wrong very, very, very quickly. As
Hmm.
you compete in gear as well, in the bench shirt and stuff, and sometimes it's like you could be fine 1 second, and all of a sudden you have like a lot of weight coming towards your face, or
Yeah.
you're in knee wraps and maybe your hips shoot back too far, and then you kind of like lose your balance. So that so things can happen, things can go wrong fast. So it's really important, like as you increase your strength, the positioning becomes more and more important, because there's more like risk involved. So I think that's really good, kind of figuring out what works for you. And I think to your point, like if you are going to get kind of amped up, if you're going to hit the ammonia or whatever, there is like not only a physical toll for that, but a psychological toll. And then not only just in the session, but that could also potentially throw off your training, impede your recovery for like the next meets, the next session. So whatever you do like today is also going to impact you tomorrow. So you got to think about what's to come, what's kind of led you up to that point, and what's going to come after. So, and I know at the meet, this past meet, we can kind of get into in a second. You know, I thought you did really well. You went 8 for 9. And even with like kind of, I would consider it kind of like a critical miss. You missed your last bench. I think it was more of just like a misgroove, whatever. Still like a good result, you know, but your second attempt obviously like was very strong. Everything kind of clicked really well. So we kind of like, we're a little bit in a hole there. So that way, that kind of forced us to be a little bit more aggressive on the deadlift, which you kind of were able to pull a weight that I don't even think you've attempted something like that in a meet before. So it was a little bit of, you know, rolling the dice, but that's kind of like what you needed to hit the goal. So maybe you can kind of talk about, I guess, you know, that particular contest. So like, you knew you kind of needed to, you were going to kind of be asked maybe to kind of do something you've never done before. And then what was that like kind of going into the deadlift and, you know, to hit the last lift?
So my deadlift's kind of a mess. I I was missing a lot of sessions during training, you know, because of work or whatever. Um, and I've always had a difficult time with it. I've always kind of had this in my head that I'm not good at deadlifting. And I think that's a big part of lifting is self-belief and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of glad that I missed that third deadlift because it kind of forced me, because I don't think you wouldn't have given me that number, that, you know, you wouldn't have given me the 340 deadlift attempt if I hadn't missed that. Um, and you said to me, you go, you can do it, but don't be a bitch. And I
Yeah.
think I needed to hear that. But I think I needed to hear that because I don't think I would have believed that I could do it. So now I can't really say that I'm a bad deadlifter because I think that's a pretty solid number. It's more than double body weight. But I remember I saw Gina right before me. She hitched and got red lighted for her deadlift attempt. So then I'm in my head throughout the lift. It took me a long time to lock it out. I'm just saying, don't hitch, don't hitch, don't hitch, don't hitch the entire time.
Yeah, you
But I
need
did.
like a lot of patience
Yeah.
when it comes to, I think the deadlift more than any lift, because you don't get to like load into it. Breaking off the ground can kind of feel like taking forever. And then if you have like a week, if you kind of struggle with lockout, that last like couple inches could feel like forever. So yeah, you did a really good job. And I'm hoping that, you know, in the future, because I think a lot of women, you're like kind of an outlier in the sense that, you know, I think that you like benching a lot and you're closing in on like a 200-pound raw bench, which is fantastic. You know, I think that a lot of women they like kind of have in their head, and for guys it could be another lift, whatever, everyone's different, but a lot of women specifically, they'll like, they like poverty bench or whatever. And I think that you could fall into that trap of just like, I'm bad at a lift. And I think in particular, so I'm hoping this is like a breakthrough for you, that now you were kind of asked to do something that was a little bit maybe outside of your comfort zone, but that's going to really kind of challenge you and kind of take it to the next level. And I think that you know, I think in terms of like, obviously we've known each other for a while, and I'll let you kind of speak to that. You know, I'm always going to try to like, I'm never going to put something on a bar that I think's like not reasonable, even though I knew it was going to be tough. But so maybe if you can, I know, so that was kind of really impressive, and I was really happy for you. And I think it kind of worked out. And same thing, kind of a similar thing happened with Steve. And I knew that like last deadlift for him was going to be a challenge, but you guys both kind of pulled it out even after key misses. So in terms of like, for somebody that's kind of maybe new to working with a coach and having a handler, in terms of like having that trust and like getting the right weight on the bar, like, can you maybe just speak to that a little bit? Because obviously I know and I know you've also done some meets on your own, but maybe kind of talk about that a little bit. Because I think sometimes people might have a hard time with, I guess, maybe trusting the process, or maybe just thinking too much at a contest. I think you do a good job at just executing. So maybe you can kind of talk about, I guess, your experiences with like having a handler and I guess what that's like versus kind of competing like on your own.
Yeah. I did a meet last March down in Tennessee, and Benny did my programming, and he gave my attempts, and I had Brandon with me, but he's not a coach, obviously, so it's kind of like I think that I was mentally struggling the last few weeks. I was training by myself, which was, in like a crappy little gym in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. Um, so I was kind of feeling like, and this didn't happen this meet, but a lot of times, like the few weeks before, I start saying like, I have no business entering a meet. Like, who do I think I am, kind of thing,
Yeah.
which I realize isn't rational, but it just kind of starts going through my head. I start feeling like kind of depressed almost. Um, and I think that was compounded by the fact that I was training by myself.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when we were like choosing attempts, things were going really well. Everything was really easy, and I probably could have pushed it a little bit more. But it was kind of us kind of deciding on those attempts, and Brandon kind of asking me, "Do you want to push this a little bit?" And I was kind of like, "I don't know," kind of thing. So when you have a coach that has an objective perspective, because it's hard to judge yourself and what you're capable of sometimes. So when you have a coach that knows you and you know them, and you kind of just let them, like, people were asking me, like, are there any numbers you want to hit for this meet? And I was like, I don't know. We'll just let John decide, because he knows what I'm capable of. So um, it's nice to have that, and I can't imagine how people do it on their own.
Yeah, I don't, it's hard to, my first couple of meets are a little bit of a blur, but I remember like I had maybe some goals in mind and whatever. And I remember like early on, like, I don't know how like I was able to get through like a meet as a teenager by myself, but somehow I did. And you learn a lot along the way. And I think kind of the most important key thing that you said, it's really hard to be objective and take your emotion out of it, like for yourself. And it's because you're always like have your own bias and stuff. So as a coach that knows you, and the longer you like work with somebody, so obviously I've seen you lift quite a bit, so I can kind of see like when you tend to fail or when things break down and things like that. And I'm not always 100% right, but usually, I have a pretty good track record with picking attempts and always kind of having the game plan written out ahead of time and then making adjustments. So obviously that last deadlift was kind of more than what we expected having to take. And that was like an adjustment we had to make based on, that last bench miss, but still a really good meet. I said it was like over 100 pounds, like on your total from like last year, which was fantastic. And I think like part of that was, again, getting back in the group environment and also having a little bit of like that mental stress and just kind of that you're able to free up that bandwidth. If you didn't have to kind of worry about the decision making, you could just worry about kind of lifting, which I think is great. So, so a couple of things I just want to kind of highlight that I think are important for people to hear is like number one, that you weren't like so like fixated on like your body weight like early on. I think that's important. Not to say you want to let your body weight get out of control, because I know that you're still health conscious and at a healthy weight and all that. So I think that's important, not to get so wrapped up with like what the scale number is, but just focus on, still be healthy, but it's okay to like let your body kind of grow. I think that was really critical for you. And then also kind of, I guess a training in a group environment, like long-term, you've been doing this a long time. And that really kind of allowed you to kind of excel and take things to the next level. I guess for anyone that's maybe like getting started in this day and age, it's obviously a completely different landscape. Like you said, it's like so different now. There's a lot more distractions. I feel like there's a lot more like ways you can kind of compare yourself, which I think could be also a trap too, because they might see like what you did, but not realize that you have like over 10 years of like probably like just training, maybe not competing, but training experience, and then a lot of years competing under your belt. So it could be easy to like kind of second guess, like, should I do this? Should I not? So for people that are just kind of starting out, like what advice, would you give them?
Yeah, definitely stay off the internet, because I mean, you're gonna see these crazy lifts, and a lot of them, because the more you click on them, the more the algorithm's gonna show them to you, and they're not necessarily representative of real life. Because when you go to meets, you know, and you go to gyms, you don't see that as much. You see kind of the more, you don't see as much elite people because they're elite. You see more average people. Um, and like, I mean, this is my first elite total, and I've been training for a long time. other people, they'll, within a year or two, they might hit an elite total. So it's very different depending on your genetics, and life gets in the way a lot of the time. So, you just can't compare yourself to other people.
Yeah, you got to kind of stay in your lane, and I think it's hard. I think about like if I like started now, I don't know if I would like have, I don't know, would have I quit? Would have I, it just, I was so like ignorant to what was good or what wasn't. I just was like, and especially when I started, like I was competing against other people that were like in the open as a teenager. So I didn't really care if the 30-year-old man beat me. I was just like, well, I'm, younger. It's whatever. So I think
Mhm.
it's important to kind of stay in your lane and kind of run your own race and kind of do this for you, focus on your PRs. But that being said, like I said, you went from probably like a total in like 500 range. Second meet, I think it was 600. Now you're at a 900 total. It took a long time for you to get there, but obviously you had a really good result. You're still having fun. You kind of created all these different relationships. So there's a lot of like upside, regardless of like the weight you lifted. I think that you kind of obviously got a lot out of, competing and training. And if you didn't have those kind of competitions to kind of like work towards, chances are you probably wouldn't be at the level you're at if you just kind of like kept going to the gym by yourself. So,
Yeah, for sure.
all right, cool. Well, I think this was really good. I'm really excited to, have you kind of back on the team and doing well. And I'm excited to see kind of what you can do in the future. A 900 milestone is huge, and then you can definitely kind of make a push towards that elusive 1,000-pound number, which is like a huge like lifetime milestone for any women of any size, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
congrats on a great meet. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, please share it. Please share out the links below. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.